I am Tom Meyer. I am Vice President of Benefit Planning Group. Next to me, I think on the screen is Patrick. Introduce yourself.
Patrick Taylor, President and Owner of Benefit Planning Group.
And I think next to Pat, you'll see Ed.
How you doing? I'm Ed DeHemicourt. I'm an investment advisor over at Benefit Planning Group as well.
Thank you. Thank you. You're going to hear from the panel of the three of us. This is going to be a discussion about discussing your pension, your retirement options and how they work, and other things you can do as far as savings and investment goals. But at Benefit Planning Group, we have been doing this, working with educators for over almost a decade and a half.
16 years.
16 years working not just, but we specialize in helping public school teachers in Louisiana regarding their pension and their savings. Me personally, my wife is a retired public school teacher and administrator. Ed, you've had some experience as well.
I certainly had some experience. I was a public school teacher in both Jefferson and St. Tammany Parish for 20 years. I retired about 5 years ago. And my wife also was in St. Tammany Parish as an administrator, and she retired after 20 years.
So I know we got people joining us from both Jefferson Parish and St. Tammany Parish schools. Just so you guys know, we do not work for the state. We don't work for the school system. We are separate independent advisors. We were invited first in a Jefferson Parish by the superintendent to talk about pensions because we do know it so well and to help you guys out. Our firm we are located in Metairie, but we work all over the region. But our physical office is in Metairie. And just so you guys know, again, as I mentioned, on your screen, you should be able to see the chat feature. As you have any questions that come along, please type them in chat. We'll be monitoring that. We're going to answer your questions. So we're going to cover a lot today. We're going to discuss your TRSL benefit, how it's calculated. We'll be discussing drop and this thing called La Drop. What is it? When is your window of opportunity? How does drop affect you? What happens after you retire from the system? What are your options that go there? Maybe some retirement options that you can start using now. It doesn't matter if you're retiring in 3 months, 3 years, 10 years. We're going to show you some things you can be putting in place now to use for your retirement and savings. Social Security. We're going to be discussing Social Security because that's always a question we get, and we do specialize in helping that question. We have the facts regarding that and how they do impact you. And we'll be discussing the importance of a financial strategy, a financial plan, and putting this all together so that you're able to actually retire with some kind of plan and strategy in place. At retirement, your whole financial life basically comes down to one major question. In fact, when's that question? When will you outlive your money, or will your money outlive you? That's kind of what it almost boils down to. And we know kind of what we want that answer to be. Pat, why don't you kind of talk about this a little bit? When we talk about inflation, we look at about a 3% average. Look what we're looking at as far as income and expenses.
Yeah. So when you look at, now, if you're making $35,000 a year, what is it going to be in 5 years from now? Well, 5 years from now, you're looking at $40,000. 10 years from now, $47,000, and in 15 years, $54,000. It's amazing how fast inflation erodes your money. When you look at an income of $50,000, if that's what your income desire is, and you're not retiring for 10 years, you're looking at needing over $67,000, and of course, 15 years, over $77,000. So you can never underestimate the power of inflation.
Those are some scary numbers. I mean, Pat, when we talk about this, people saying, look, the cost of living is not going down. Inflation is actually averaging just over 2.2, 2.3% right now.
A little low right now, exactly.
Yeah, but if we just put a 3% here, just for a calculation example. But you're right, the cost of living is, of course, going up. I mean, cars, milk, bread, I mean, you name it, nothing is getting cheaper. Insurance costs, everything's going up. You're very true. So I guess the point of the slide wasn't meant to scare you. It's just the point of saying, look, your money has to keep up with your cost of living. You're going to be getting a pension. Everyone on this call is getting a pension, but that pension for the most part is fixed. They do a little bit of pay raises on that when the legislature allows them or actually gives them to you. But the point is, at first, it sounds like it's a good number, but as you get older, the cost of it is going up, but your pension kind of stays here. And that's where the big gap is. And that's where we talk about what else can you be doing, making this thing work for you. Thanks, Beth. So where will your retirement income actually come from? That's the important question. It's only going to come from 4 sources. When you look to retire, you're going to have to take money either from your teacher pension on drop. We'll discuss that. Some of you, most of you, in fact, will find out actually Social Security, maybe a little bit of money there for you. Then there's your personal savings. And after that, it's your 403Bs, your IRAs that you happen to do on your own. That's it. That's where your money's going to be coming from. And in fact, Social Security, they're just announcing, I was just reading an article today. I'm sure you can see this, Social Security bump. They're having a little increase from Social Security next year, but they're saying the increase is actually going to be offset by the cost of Medicare Part B. So even though people are going to be seeing an increase in their Social Security next year, the cost of Medicare is actually going up as well. So actually, they may not see much of an increase, if any at all. So let's talk about this TRSL benefit a little bit. Let's talk about teachers' retirement. This teachers' retirement plan is called a defined benefit retirement plan. What that means is that you've heard of 401ks and other type of plans. It doesn't work like that. Defined benefit means that your pension is a fixed number based upon not how much money you put in. It's based upon how much time you put in and what the average of your salary is. And I'll show you that. But your retirement is not based on how much money you put in. The TRSL plan, most of you, I think from the surveys we saw here, are regular plan members. Regular plan members are teachers and administrators, as well as any kind of administrative staff or secretarial staff. If you are a bus driver or a cafeteria worker, you may be on a little bit different plan than the TRSL regular plan members. But right now, everyone contributes 8% of your salary towards the teacher pension program. When you go to retire, you choose an option for life. So when you go to check this box off at Ed, it's not just at retirement. When else do they check this box off?
When you check this box off, it's an option for life. And so that means no matter what happens in your life after that, you can't change your mind. So you have to keep in mind, who do I want to be my beneficiary?
And Ed, I'm going to leave in your experience again. This last point I brought up is that when if you want to find out your TRSL benefits, how hard is it?
Absolutely. This is a great tool if you haven't found it already. If you log on to trsl.org, you can find your benefits, when you're able to drop, when you're able to retire, when you can retire early, for example, 20 years versus a full retirement, say 30 years. And you're able to see what your pension's going to be to the penny. You do not have to call TRSL. You don't have to make this trip to Baton Rouge that I hear so many teachers say that they're doing. Unless you really want to go to Baton Rouge and really want to go to the TRSL office and take a little tour, there's no reason at all for you to do that. You could just log on. They're going to ask you some personal information, your social security number and your date of birth. It's okay. Please put it in. And all of a sudden, like magic, you're going to see your pension, your drop date, what your pensions are going to be depending on when you retire. It's perfect. And even better, when you decide to pull that trigger and retire, you can do that on this portal as well. You don't have to go to Baton Rouge to retire. You literally will just go to your portal, press the button that says retire now, and just like that, you're retired. Of course, you got to go to Human Resources and deal with some paperwork involving your benefits after the fact. But the end game here is you can do everything on this portal. So please, if you don't get anything out of this, create that portal for yourself so you're not guessing what your pension is going to be, and you're not guessing what your income is going to be for that next stage.
Yeah. And Ed, thank you for that. I mean, and I put this slide up, and there is a correction. It's not TRSL/org, it's TRSL.org. It was just a typographical error. I realized I put on the slide here. And in fact, you get a statement every year from TRSL about your pension to tell you how many service credits you have. And if you make sure that's correct, make sure that number's right. You get that usually letter right around every June or July is when it's mailed to you. And make sure that number's right. If something's wrong, fix it the sooner than the later.
Many of you probably got hired maybe a month after the school year started or a few days after the school year started. So the time window that you're able to retire may be not absolutely perfect in regards to the beginning or ending of a school year. So you want to just make sure everything is in good order and get that fixed prior to pulling the trigger.
It is no longer necessary to have to go sit through a 4 or 8 hour TRSL meeting at some facility. Am I correct, gentlemen?
You're right.
Yeah, you're not necessary. Absolutely correct, Patrick. You can get all your personal pension information from this platform, the TRSL.org platform, as long as you put in your personal information, which again, I can't stress enough, is perfectly fine. And then having the conversation with us in regards to what's the next step in regards to your retirement plan and what your next step as far as plan B is concerned.
Well, so let's talk about that pension a little bit. How is this pension actually calculated when you go to retire? Well, it's a very simple formula. Everyone here looks like has membership prior to 2011 from what we saw in our survey questions. But if you have it after, I'm going to show you something different. But if you started in TRSL, not just the parish you're in, but part of TRSL before 2011, the way your pension is calculated is they're going to take the years of service. And everybody gets one service credit per year. They're going to take your years of service. They're going to multiply that by the average of your highest 3 years compensation. Not your 3 years last. It's your highest 3 years in a row, wherever that happened it may be. So because I know some people have a higher salary, then they may bring it down a bit later on for different things. So they may go into administration, then come back into the classroom. My point is that it's the average of your highest 3 years whenever they occur in a row. That's what they do. They multiply that by the last thing is the benefit factor of either 2 or 2.5%. Now, if anyone joined us after TRSL in 1/1 of 2011, it's the same calculation, but instead of using the average 3 years, they use the average of your 5 years compensation, and they multiply that by 2.5%. So that calculation gives you what's called maximum option. I'm going to give you an example of how this looks a bit later on. So again, just people say, am I in the 2% or 2.5% formula? Well, again, it's based upon your age and your years. So you get this 2% formula if you are age 60 with at least 5 years of service, or if you retire at any age with 20 years of service credit, you're going to be in that 2% formula. You get the 2.5% formula if you see the screen, if you're 65 with 20 years, 55 with 25 years, or any age of service with 30 years. So that gives you the 2 or 2.5% formula. If you join after July of 99, well, then they're going to bring this other thing in here where they call it actuarially reduced if you decide to leave at 20 years. That's where it gets a little more complicated to get an exact number for you. But again, as Ed mentioned, by going to trsl.org and create your portal, you'll be able to see your numbers and any kind of calculation that you may want to do inside there. And that's where we help you more. Ed mentioned that, and Pat mentioned that as well. We specialize in helping you. So having a conversation with us, we're going to help you figure this out to say when is not only when can you, but when does it make sense for you to is actually the biggest question we run into. Many of you probably are eligible to retire now, but it's like, is it the right thing to do? What's it going to look like after? And that's where we're going to help you put this plan, this formula that Patrick's going to show you a little later on. So again, when we go back to TRSL, you have all these options. You have maximum retirement option. You have options 1 through options 4A. You've got this thing called drop, this thing called now La Drop. And there's another thing in there called the initial lump sum benefit. So there's a lot of choices inside here. And Ed said something important. When you're going to make this choice, you're deciding for life what your choice is, and you can't change your mind. So you got to make sure it's the right one. But you don't pick it until you either go into drop or just fully retire without going into drop. So this is an example, as I mentioned, that you can do on yourself. And this example, I just show someone who's has 30 years of service. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but this shows you all the different options and choices. So what I'm going to do is I kind of expand this a little bit, and I kind of gave this an example of the teacher and the spouse. What would happen here is if she chose max option in this example, she would get that $3,462 per month for the rest of her life. As long as she lives, she gets that money. And she'll only get a pay raise if the state decides to give her a pay raise. It doesn't happen every year automatically. Everything stops right there at the death of the teacher on that max option. Well, option 2A brings in now a beneficiary. And you're allowed to have only one beneficiary on these examples. So with options 2A and 3A, only one beneficiary is allowed. So under option 2A, as a teacher, $31.73 a month, a little bit less money, about $289 a month less than what she's getting at max. But at her death, the exact same pension would then come to me for the rest of my life. But at my death, everything stops. So if something were to happen to both she and I together, take a trip, something bad happens, we both pass away, everything stops there. If we have children, they don't get the regular pension. And now some people have asked me, well, what if if I've got kids, but I'm not married? Well, you can name your child, pick your favorite child. You can only name one beneficiary, one child as your beneficiary to pension, and they would get that same number for the rest of their life. Here's a downside, and Pat and Ed and I have all seen this. It's unfortunate. when someone names their child as beneficiary, it's going to drop down their pension amounts because they have to make, the state has to pay that child for that child's life. So by doing that, it's going to drop your pension down even further. So there's something different you can do there versus naming your child's beneficiary under your pension. Now, under options 1, you can name your children. You can name multiple people under option 1, and they get whatever's left over from the money you put in. But I'm just showing you the examples of the pension options here that we see most people use. And option 3A, you can see here, it's you're going to get 151 month less in this example. But what happens under option 3, if the teacher passes away and it comes to me, I get half of her pension. Not all, I just get half of it. So these are the examples of what Ed was talking about. When you pick one of these, when you choose one, the choice you make is a choice for life. And the other thing about this options 2A and 3A, these are called the pop-up options. What that means is that if the spouse was to die before the teacher collecting, the teacher would then bump up to maximum option. Now, Patrick, something that we see people specialize in this a lot is we have a way that if they say, look, I've got beneficiaries, is there a way that I can maybe maximize this money? We call it pension max, to use this money elsewhere using these examples.
So, Tom, the pension max has been around for a long time. What most people don't realize is TRSL basically is an annuity, right? All pension plans are based off of annuity benefits. So in the event, let's use this option here. The maximum option is 3462. Whereas you've got option 2A, which is 3173. In rare cases, or not rare, semi-rare cases, if they're really, really healthy, they can buy life insurance and enough life insurance so that in the event that they die, then that life insurance, those life insurance proceeds will give them enough money to pay that pension for them. And the great news is it's a tax-free death benefit. So that means instead of having a taxable benefit, income benefit, it's now tax-free. So that's basically what pension max is.
So yeah, so Pat, basically what you're doing is you're buying a life insurance policy on yourself. Yep. So instead of, in this example, I would still take the 3462, but that same $289 a month, I buy a policy to protect that pension, that if something happens to that spouse, well, now you can name other beneficiaries to receive that money, children, grandchildren, whoever you want, your favorite, whoever may be, that you can give that money away, and they get that money, as you mentioned, that's a very important, tax-free, because all this money here is taxable. And Pat mentioned something important. Not everybody can do this. This is just an option that some people can fit because of health. We check into it. We run the options. If it works for you, we'll show you how it works. It may not work for you, and we'll show you why it doesn't work. But it's just something else to consider to help you protect your income. It
probably works, and you might agree with me on this, Tom. It probably works in 15% of the cases.
Right. But that 15, 20%, they're getting a substantially higher pension, and they're saving money that they can always change later on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's just something we'll look at. And that's when we talk to us, we're going to kind of run that scenario for you and see if it just makes sense to do. If this doesn't make sense for everybody else to do. It's very important. Now, in this example, we're showing you this is just what it takes in this example to retire. Well, when you go into drop, you are effectively retiring from the pension system. You're still working, but you're choosing an option that's going to fund your drop account while you're in drop. So when we talk about drop, again, you're retiring, but let me show you the drop window. And the reason I call it a window, it's very important to know it's a window. Drop is a one-shot deal whenever you're able to go in. So this is the three options that go into drop. And when you choose one of these options, it's not like you can switch around. You got to pick whichever one fits you first. These are the numbers to know. And those of you in drop now will be able to answer this question. And I know you can't do it through, but maybe you can do it through chat. When you're eligible for drop, TRSL, did they call you and say, hey, congratulations, Mary, congratulations, John, you're now eligible for drop, sign here? Ed, what's the answer? No, they don't do that, right?
No.
This is not like the dentist. You know, the dentist will send you that little 6-month postcard to remind you of your checkup. Drop and TRSL does not send you that postcard. It's completely up to you to know when you're able to get into drop. And if you miss the entry point of that window, you got to get in as quick as possible because the window is slowly closing. And that's exactly what Tom is about to get into in more detail.
This is when your drop window begins for everybody on this call. 30 years of service at any age, 25 years of service at least age 55, and 10 years of service at age 60. Whichever one of these three drop windows you hit first, that's when your drop window begins. And the reason I say window is because, as I just said it, when one of these triggers hits, this thing starts to close. And over 3 years, it's gone. So if you decide to go in a drop a year late, you can enter it a year late, but now there's only 2 years remaining to it. And as it goes down even further, you go in 2 years late, you can still go in, but there's only 1 year left to drop. So after 3 years, this window is gone. So it's important to know when your drop window is. Often when we do the workshops live, this is where I get hands and people say, look, I've got 27 years, but I'm 54. What happens? The moment you turn 55, that second trigger hits, and that's when you go into drop. So they got to have years and age. But again, drop is not meant for everybody. Look, if you anticipate a significant salary change, like if you're going from being a teacher to an administrator and you're going to see a big jump in your salary before you retire, maybe drop isn't right for you. Because if you go into drop, remember, you're retiring and you're locking in your pension at the lower salary numbers than you would make as an administrator or doing something else. So just know if you have a significant salary change coming, maybe drop isn't for you. Any of you here looking to work 40 years? I usually get a lot of chuckles when I ask this question. But look, if you're going to go 40 years of service, I know some of you have or will, you get 100% of your salary. So by waiting to go to 40 years, if that's your choice to go 40 years of service, drop isn't for you. Usually when I throw that question, I see people passing on the aisles going, no way am I going 40. But yeah, there are people who are going 40 years. Also, if you decide to continue to work, maybe your pension may be doing better by skipping drop. We see this often for someone who goes into becomes a teacher or in a school system later in life, where they may hit that drop window at age 60. They got 10 years, but maybe looking to work to 65. Drop may not be their best choice for them either. And what we do, and Pat and Ed and I do this, is we sit down with you and say, let's look at your specific numbers. What's your age and what's your drop window, and does it make sense for you to do it? And if it is, it's a very good program for a lot of people to do it.
But I think, Tom, just to stress the point one more time, when you go into drop, you are retiring. So whatever option you choose, if you chose that maximum benefit, you're stuck for life with that decision.
You're choosing it for life. You're right. Now, here's an example of how drop works. So again, I'll use Mary and John as our example here. I'll make Mary the educator. So what happens here is Mary decides she's going to go into drop, and she did it at the option 2A for my previous example. So what happens is this money goes into the drop account for up to 3 years. After 3 years, it stops going in. So she's still working. She's collecting her salary. And while she's working, she's not paying 8% to the TRSL because she's not building more service credits. But her pension that she would normally get from being retired, as Pat just mentioned, is now going into the drop account. Well, after 3 years of time, this can be pretty substantial. I mean, after 3 years in this example, that's $114,000, over $114,000 sitting in this drop account at the state. So what happens next? Well, if she decides to retire, well, then that pension that was from the drop account now comes to her. And the money that's in the drop account, that 114, the state makes you start taking money from that. Now, they give you 12 months to decide, but they're going to make you start taking money out on a monthly, annual, or semi-annual basis. And that money comes to you until it runs out. And when it runs out, it's set. And once they start paying you, they're not going to let you change the amount of money they're pulling from. Now, drop, the state does allow you to do a partial withdrawal from your drop account, but you only do a partial withdrawal once in your lifetime. Here's why that's important. If you get that $114,000 there and something comes up, let's just say you need new air conditioning units or something, and you need to pull $20,000 out, they'll let you do it, but only once. After that, then they're going to continue just paying you after that. They don't let you go in there multiple times and take lump sums out. So let's just say in this example now, Mary decides she's going to continue to work after drop. She's not going to retire. She wants to continue to work. What happens? That money at drop account stays at the state. It stays with drop. She can't move it. She can't touch it. She can't access it. It just stays right there at the state of Louisiana. And she starts building additional service credits again in TRSL. And what they'll do is when she does decide to retire, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later, whatever it may be, they're going to take the additional years she worked, plus what she was making her pension. They're going to adjust that, add those together to give you a brand new adjusted pension. And then, of course, then after that, she has a drop account that can come to her.
Tom, so, how much money is that? Never mind. There it is.
There's your question, Pat. It's like you know what's coming next. This is what the lead drop is doing. Now, everyone here, I'm assuming, is going to be in lead drop. If you entered the drop system after January 1 of 2004, your money no longer goes into the old drop account that's earning anywhere between 7 to, we've seen as high as 15, 18%. Anyone who goes in a drop from January 1 of 04, you're now going into what's called liquid asset money drop, or that's what the LA drop stands for. And you can see here, this is right from TRSL's website. This is the interest rates of what you earn inside that contract. You don't earn any interest while it's accumulating. You only earn interest after your drop's complete. So we had several years at zero. In 2012, you earned a little bit, what, 10 thousandths of a percent?
Yep.
In last year, 19 was the first time in a long time, in almost 10 years, that it earned more than 1%. It earned 1.89% in 2019. What's our point of showing you this? Well, if you leave it at the state, you leave it at drop, don't count this being a big money maker for you, interest maker. And you're very limited in how you can withdraw the funds out. It's going to earn money market rates. And money markets, as you guys know, look at your bank accounts. You're not going to be earning much in money market accounts. The state basically decides this based on the money market assets. So what's an option? Here's an idea. Again, we showed you one idea with that Pat mentioned about the life insurance. Here's another idea. And we help a lot of educators and a lot of administrators do just this. They go and decide to retire. They're collecting the pension, but they move the drop account instead, moving it out of the state to their own IRA. Now it's in their own investment retirement account, individual retirement account. Ed, what's the advantage of having your own IRA?
Well, now you have control over your money. I mean, that's the most exciting thing out of all of this, is now you're pulling it away from the state and you have control over your money. And when I say you have control over your money, that means now you can invest your money to the top risk tolerance that you have. Are you conservative? Are you aggressive? Are there certain spaces you want to be invested in? For example, like blue chip stocks or certain types of bonds, whatever the case may be. Now you can control your money, and there's a space for everyone, no matter how conservative or how aggressive you are. So that's what makes it so exciting. And of course, you can also decide who your beneficiaries are going to be. And there are other places that we can put the money that can be more advantageous as in regards to maybe creating a supplemental income stream. So whatever the case may be, you now have control over your money for your next phase of your life.
Well, Ed, you brought up a very good point. And Pat, I'm gonna let you answer this question. Because I know the answer, but I want you to cover it. From most teachers and most educators that we see, when they come talk to us at our office, what's the one thing they say about this drop account? I never want to see a what?
A loss.
I never want to see a loss.
In fact, if anything, they want guarantees 100% across the board. Okay, 97% across the board.
Yeah, and you're right. This is the biggest asset that most of you are going to have. Control outside maybe other kind of IRAs or savings you may have outside your house. So Pat said, right. People say to me, look, this is the biggest lump sum money I got. I've got to make sure this money is there for me the rest of my life. I never want to see a negative number. Or is there a way for me to maybe create a second pension out of that money? And Pat, is there?
That's exactly what I was thinking about when Ed was talking as well. You've got a guaranteed income with PRSL. You might have a little bit of an income coming in from Social Security, but you can now turn that drop money into a guaranteed income that will never outlast your life. And if something happens to you, guess what? Now you have an inheritance for your children or your beneficiaries as well.
Very true.
And if I can segue off of what Patrick is saying, if you don't mind, Tom, just think about exactly what Pat said. It's a guarantee. We could create a guaranteed income stream. We can create a supplemental pension. So as time goes on, just like what we talked about earlier, the idea that inflation is going to slowly eat away at your pension. It will, between 2 and 3% a year. Now we could take that drop money and help supplement the loss that you're going to realize as the years move along. Now,
Exactly.
think how powerful that is. Now, there was one other question I want to address. I saw Mary asked, what are the tax consequences of pulling all your money out in regards to your drop? When you move the money from your drop account to an IRA, that does not create a taxable event. Now, when you start taking distributions from your IRA, as well as taking distributions from your drop account, if you leave it with the state, you will pay taxes on it. And then the only difference is the state tax issue. If you leave it with the state, then you do not pay state tax. But if you move it to an IRA, you do pay state tax. But what you gain out of having to pay that 3 or 4% to the state is the ability to create a guaranteed supplemental income stream and to create growth that the state will not offer you if it sits with them. Does that make sense?
Very true.
It's a win-win 100% of the time.
It is.
Well, I'm going to add one more point to that, and that is I've been at this for 36 years, and now that I'm dealing with more retired clients than non-retired clients, I will tell you that the idea of having money tied up in an account that you don't have access to except for a monthly income, especially if a medical emergency comes up, you need to go to a nursing home. There are all kind of situations that people are running into. And if you choose that drop money and you leave it there, you're limiting your distribution ability going forward.
So basically, we're able to do, Pat, you just mentioned, we're able to show you how you have choices, how you have control, and how you can make sure this money lasts for you and use it the way you need to use it. That's kind of what we help you do and help you decide. Very good. So it leads me back to the next question. Again, where's your retirement coming from? Well, we covered the TRSL pension. This is the next one. And this is where I'm glad you cannot throw something at me, but let's talk a little about Social Security. What is the Social Security? What's the true rules? What's not going to really happen? Here are the facts. You can get your Social Security statement every year. You can get it online, just like TRSL. You can go to Social Security's website and get your Social Security statement. It's important to get. Look at what the number is. They're showing you how much you're eligible to get at retirement time. If you've worked, say, other jobs, you've done other things outside the TRSL system, maybe while you were in college, all that counted and built up some kind of Social Security money for you. The problem is the number they're going to show you is wrong. The reason it's wrong is they don't know that you're in a pension plan that's going to pay you. And they're going to adjust that pension plan. Here's the two rules and how they affect you. And I can make these, we can email these to you to get more details, but you look them up. One's called windfall elimination, government pension offset. With windfall elimination, what they're going to do is Social Security says, okay, let's look at the money you have paid into Social Security, everything you've done, not your spouse, just you. And they're going to say, well, at 62 or 66 or whenever you're able to collect Social Security, they're going to decrease that down based on the formula they use because of your pension. You're going to have to let them know you're collecting a state pension, and they're going to decrease that benefit down. Now, they can decrease it down as much as like $460 a month. In some cases, it wipes it out, but most people we're seeing, they're getting a little bit of something, but they're not going to get that full number that they see on their statement. The second rule that affects you, government pension offset. And this is the one that kind of gets our goat more than anybody else. Under government pension offset, and I'll use Mary and I being the teacher and I being the spouse. If I worked another job where I'm paying into Social Security, I wasn't in the education system like you are, like Mary is, and I pass away, under most circumstances, my spouse will be eligible to receive my full Social Security benefit. Well, not under government pension offset. What happens for widowed spouses is they're going to say, look, because you're getting a pension, we're going to decrease what you should have received from your deceased spouse by 2/3 of your pension. So just to put this in easy numbers, let's say you're getting $3,000 a month in pension, and the Social Security benefit I was receiving was, let's say, $2,500. Well, 2/3 of $3,000 is $2,000. That means they're going to decrease the Social Security benefit you would receive, that $2,500. They're going to decrease it by $2,000, which means you'll get $500. In some cases, it decreases down to $0. So that's the government pension offset rule. It affects your spouse or your widow spouse. Now, this only affects you when you go to retire. So some of you on this webinar may know some teachers who are widowed, who are older, who are collecting a deceased spouse's Social Security now, and you can do that. But the moment they retire, that's going to be cut off and that's going to be stopped. So we talked about pension, we talked about Social Security, and I'm kind of moving on to the next part. What are some other things you can be doing? And there are other things from 403Bs, but we wanted to highlight one today called a Roth IRA, and some of you may be familiar with this. And we do a lot of these for some of our educators. Ed, why don't you briefly walk us through how a Roth IRA helps?
Absolutely. What makes a Roth IRA exciting is it allows you to save money, and the money will grow tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on it as it grows. And then when you start taking the money out when you retire, you get the money tax free. Now, the reason that is exciting, because you might be thinking, I'm not excited right now, Ed. You need to get a little better with this. Is this. Think about your drop. Your drop is taxable. Think about your pension. Your pension's taxable. If you're contributing to a 403B at school, when you start taking that money when you retire, that's taxable. The common theme right now is taxable, taxable, taxable. With a Roth IRA, when you start taking the money out, it's tax-free. I mean, that's magical. I mean, think about it. That's tax-free. So now having that extra bucket of money, that tax-free bucket of money, that can help start washing out some of the potential tax liability that you're going to experience as you retire. And you can put away up to $6,000 a year in an IRA, $7,000 if you're 50 years or older. Now, you might be thinking, I can't afford that, Ed. There's no way I can afford an IRA. You've lost your mind. You forgot what teachers make. Oh, no. I did not forget what teachers make. I made it for 20 years. My wife made it for 20 years. I'm on board. But here's the deal. If you go in the drop, if you remember what Tom talked about, when you go in the drop, he even mentioned, when you go in the drop, they stop taking 8% of your salary and putting it towards your pension. You could take that 8% and dump it into a Roth IRA during your drop years. You would not even feel it. Additionally, you can start your Roth IRA now before you get into drop. And some people will say, I can't afford it. Well, how many of you guys like to drink Starbucks or PJs? I'm a big Starbucks person. I like my Pikes Peaks. You go in there and you spend, say, $4.50 a day on some fancy little Frappuccino. $4.50 a day, just simple math. $137 a month. You're spending $1,642 a year on Frappuccinos. Multiply that by 25 years, you just dumped $41,000 on Frappuccinos. Now, before you start yelling at me, no, I'm not telling you to stop drinking Frappuccinos. I'm not telling you any of that. But what I'm saying is if you just scale back and you put that 1642 into your own pocket, into a Roth IRA, 25 years at an average 8% growth in your pocket, you would have $120,000. I mean, $120,000 off of coffee. The whole idea here is pay yourself first. When you're saving for a Roth, you don't have to put a lot away. You could put as little as $100 a month away. You could make it $50 per pay, but it'll come out of your checking account. It has nothing to do with the school system. So how much can you put into an IRA? You can put $6,000 a year. And then when you make 50 years old, the federal government gives you a birthday gift. And that birthday gift is called the catch-up provision of an extra $1,000. So you can put $7,000 a year in your Roth IRA. And what's also exciting is you can have a Roth IRA and your spouse can have a Roth IRA. So, and there's a few qualifications that you got to make sure you meet, and we take care of those logistics. But the end game is this. You now, if you do this, you could create a six-figure bucket for yourself plus drop money. And that should be something that is exciting. And all three of us can easily take care of that for you. How do we get through retirement? And Patrick always has such a neat way of explaining this. But how do we get to retirement? And what do we do when we get to retirement? And Patrick, I'm going to let you take the bull by its horns.
And the reason I put this slide up is because some of you may remember something called a triptych. If you were younger like me, when we would take our trips, we would always go to AAA and get a highlighted map of point A, where we are, to get to point B. And they would highlight that triptych, which you see on your screen. That's an example of one. How to get there, even showing you detours, even you showed how to avoid any kind of possible construction may be going on. Now we're using GPSs in our car. Now we're, necessarily need that paper triptych. Some people are still using it, but for the most part, we're using the GPS. And what's the GPS doing? It's the exact same thing. You're getting from point A to point B. You're saying, hey, I'm taking this trip. I want to get here. How do I get there quicker, safer, avoiding any kind of adjustments that may come along? Because the GPS is now say, look, there's construction in front of you. There's an accident in front of you. Reroute, readjust. And the reason I put this example up, and Pat's going to show you this, is that's exactly why having a written financial plan does the exact same thing. Patrick?
Thank you, Tom. I will. So you guys are doing a great job. Just so everybody will know, Tom and I have been working together almost 30 years. Ed's been with us 10, 8, something like that, a long time. I've always said, and I've drilled this into everybody's head for years, and that is, people spend more time and money planning a vacation than they do their own retirement. Planning for retirement is easy. Planning for post-retirement is challenging. We're going to help you identify your goals and evaluate where those goals are. We're going to evaluate your options and recommend a strategy. It's all about having a plan and implementing the plan, and how do we do that? And then we're going to monitor and we're going to review that financial plan, because your life is going to change. We look at your income, your assets, your goals, your objectives, and help you identify those goals and objectives so that we can help you reach those goals and objectives and that plan. We even have your own personal financial website so that you always know how much money you have, how much money you owe, and how close are you to reaching those goals.
Yeah. That plan is that roadmap. And again, as Pat mentioned, and as discussed so much today, what we're going to do is show you your pension. We're going to talk about drop. We're going to discuss Social Security. We're going to be showing you ways that you can save, things you may not even know you can do. We'll discuss budget, and we're going to put a strategy and a plan for you that we monitor as we go along. And again, if it doesn't matter if you're retiring now, you're retiring 10 years from now, it's just that important plan to have. And then even after you retire, that's when that plan really becomes important, to make sure we're on target, that you never run out of money at retirement. And it goes back to that first question we asked you guys. That's the scariest thing. Are you going to outlive your money, or is your money outlive you? And that's what having that plan is so important to have. Yeah.
And lastly, some of you guys may be thinking out there, well, Ed, I'm going to retire in 4 years, which means I don't have enough time to put $137 a month in a Roth IRA to get that $120,000 that you talked about. So is it even worth me getting a Roth IRA because I only have a few years? And the answer to that is, well, of course, it's worth it. You might not have $120,000. What if you end up with $15,000? But that's 15 grand more than you had. I mean, if somebody asked you, oh, do you want nothing in this account, or do you want 15,000? Think about it. How many of you would be thrilled with 15,000? I know I would be. And so don't let the time issue be a concern, because you can't go back in time. You can only move forward. And that's exactly what this next slide is all about. It's about moving forward. The idea of, okay, now you have all the tools that you need. How do I make these tools work? And Tom, why don't you talk about that?
Well, sure. I mean, that's scheduling that financial review. We can meet with you by phone. We could do online meetings, which is fine. Web meetings where we're able to talk to you and see things. In person is always going to be great too. And there's no cost or obligation to sit down and have a meeting with us. In this first meeting, we just talk about what's important to you, what are your goals, and how we can help. But let's talk about. I'm going to go back, guys. We have only a few minutes left. We have a couple of questions that came in earlier. Michelle asked. She said, I'm in my 27th year of teaching, and I'm 50 years old. I'm trying to decide when I'm able to retire. Michelle, you know what? That's the answer to what we're talking about right now. When we do that financial plan for you, we can say when, not a matter of, it doesn't take age to retire, it takes income. So we're going to be able to help you figure out, can you afford to retire, and what are your options going forward? Now, some people are saying, I have to get out. Things are very different right now. This COVID thing has maybe changed our lives quite a bit. And we're going to go through that. So that's where we can actually answer that question for you, is to do that written strategy. And it's not a very complicated plan to see it. You're going to see a very easy to understand plan about what's going forward with this.
It doesn't matter whether or not you've got $200,000 in assets, or $750,000, or $2 million in assets. You need to have a plan so that you can understand how you can live and live without running out of income and money down the road.
Schedule a meeting by calling us, 504-833-3434, or on your screen, you should be able to see schedule a time. You can go to my online calendar, schedule a time that's available for you. Our website is benefitplanninggroup.net, but you know what? Just call us, 504-833-3434, and Ed, Patrick, myself, Tom Meyer, talk to one of us. We'll be glad to help you out.